I'm Lisa Steele. I'm a fifth-generation chicken keeper, author, and master gardener. My grandparents were honest-to-goodness New England chicken farmers. I grew up across the street from their farm and raised chickens as a kid. Then I headed off to college and a career on Wall Street, thinking my days as a farm girl were over. After almost a decade of living the glamorous life in Manhattan, I found myself married and living on a small Harvey farm in Virginia. And guess what? We started raising chickens. Last summer, we packed up the flock and headed to Maine, where I raised them the old-fashioned way, the way my grandparents did, with a few modern tricks and tips of my own. Sometimes you just can't escape your destiny. Fall has arrived on the farm. The days are getting shorter, the temperatures are getting colder, and the leaves are changing. You might be noticing some changes in your flock too. On today's episode of Fresh Eggs Daily, we're going to talk about some of those changes and what you can do to help your chickens get ready for winter. We're also going to get the coop ready for winter, then head out to the garden, do some cleanup. I want to plant some garlic, and then we'll be picking pumpkins and heading into the kitchen. I want to show you one of my favorite recipes using fresh pumpkin and fresh eggs. Enjoy the show. So in the fall, as the days get shorter, you're going to start noticing fewer eggs, but you're also going to start noticing piles of feathers in your coop. The fall triggers a molt, which basically means that the chickens drop their feathers. In the winter, to keep warm, they fluff their feathers out and they trap warm air in between the feathers in their bodies. So they really need nice new feathers for the winter. So each fall, you'll start to notice it starts up here on the head and works its way down the body, and your chicken will start losing her feathers. The new feather quills actually push out the old feathers. So you likely won't notice big bare patches. If you do, it could be something different. It could be a pecking issue within the flock. It could be mites or lice. But if you notice new feather quills coming in, then your chicken is molting. So when your chickens are molting, you might think they're sick. They don't act like themselves. They tend to hide. They don't want to be picked up. It's pretty uncomfortable, so you don't want to handle them much. While she's molting, she generally stops laying eggs. It can take a couple weeks, it can take a couple months. Some of your better layers are going to molt faster and get back to laying, and some of your worst layers could be molting for 6 months and might continue laying eggs through the beginning part of that, but generally by the time it gets to their body, they're going to stop laying eggs. So that's perfectly normal. So while your chicken's molting, I still keep mine on layer feed because you still do have some that are laying. They might be molting at different times. You know, everyone doesn't start at the same time. So I leave them on the layer feed, but I do like to feed some protein-rich treats. Feathers are mostly protein. So things like sunflower seeds, mealworms, meat scraps even, that's all really good protein for them to help them grow in new feathers. Protein-rich treats in the fall are great for your chickens. They're growing back feathers, and feathers are mostly protein. So anything you can give them to give them a little extra protein will help them grow their feathers back. So things like nuts or sunflower seeds, mealworms are great sources of protein. So what you want to do is in a bowl, put 2 cups of oats, half a cup of chopped nuts, a cup of sunflower seeds, and then you want to put in a cup of mealworms, then a half a cup of raisins. So once you're done with your dry ingredients, you just kind of want to stir them up a little bit. And then you want to put in a half a cup of coconut oil, and then you want to put in a 1/4 cup of molasses, and then you just want to stir that all up until it makes kind of a nice dough that will stick together. Okay, so we've got kind of a nice mixture here. Then you want to take a cookie sheet with some parchment paper on the bottom, and with an ice cream scooper, just kind of scoop out little mounds of your mealworm treats here. So once you have your tray full, you want to put them into a 325-degree oven for about 20 minutes. So along with shorter days triggering a molt, shorter days also reduce your egg production. A chicken needs about 16 hours of daylight to stimulate her pineal gland, and that is the gland that lets the ovary know to release an egg. When you get down to about 12 hours of sunlight a day, production will actually stop for the most part. Some of the high production breeds will lay through the winter, but most of your heritage breeds or the fancy breeds will stop altogether. So the first molt happens at about 18 months old. So if your chicks hatch in the spring, they won't molt through that first winter. New layers who have started laying late summer will generally lay really well through the winter. So if you get new chicks each spring, you kind of assure yourself eggs through the winter. Even though your older girls have stopped, the new layers will lay through that first winter. So if you want to keep getting eggs through the winter, you can light your coop. What you want to do is set a timer so the light comes on before the sun comes up. Set it so you're getting the 16 hours of day that the chickens need. You don't want to add the light at the end of the day because you don't want the chickens to go into roost and then all of a sudden the light just cuts off, because anybody who's not in place won't be able to find their spot on the roost and all that. So you want to add the extra hours in the morning so the timer comes on before sunlight, and that's how they get their extra light so they can continue laying eggs. I personally don't light my coop. I figure, especially coming off of a molt and a heavy laying season all summer, the chickens need a break. They're trying to stay warm in the winter, so I'd rather have them concentrate on that and not worry about laying so much. So I do give mine a break, and they start up laying again in the spring, just like Mother Nature intended them to.
Your girls deserve the best. When feeding your chickens Blue Seal Home Fresh poultry products, you will be giving them the balanced nutrition they need for their everyday health. You can be fully confident that Blue Seal products not only contribute to their nutrient-rich eggs, but also to the pretty sheen on their feathers. Visit their website, blueseal.com, or your local Blue Seal retailer to learn more.
Now that fall is here, I want to give my coop a really good cleaning before winter comes. Throughout the spring and summer, I kind of just turn over the straw, I rake out whatever's really dirty, rake it into the run, and it kind of helps with the muddy spots in the run. But before winter, I really want to give the coop a good cleaning. You want to get all the dirty bedding out and make sure that your coop is nice and clean. I also increase the depth of the bedding. In the spring and summer, maybe 4 or 6 inches of straw is all that I use in there, and in the winter I want to build that up to about 1 foot. We have the ducks, they sleep on the ground, so that keeps them warmer, and it also keeps the chickens warmer, having a nice layer of insulation on the bottom of the coop. So today is coop cleaning day. So I just want to rake out all the straw, and as you can see, it's a mixture of straw and manure, lots of feathers, since everybody's molting. And this is for your garden. You definitely don't want to throw this away. If you don't garden, you definitely want to add it to your compost pile and it'll just disintegrate. But if you do garden, it's what I use to mulch the garden over the winter. I used to use a wheelbarrow for coop cleaning, and then I discovered dump carts. Dump carts are awesome. They're more stable than wheelbarrows. You can pull it with one hand, and they dump. So you just pull this and you can dump your whole cart out when you get where you're going. Plus you can hitch it to like an ATV or other little vehicle. So I use it for cleaning the coop, I use it to haul feed from the car to the coop, I use it in the garden if I'm harvesting pumpkins or gourds or whatever. It's just a really great thing to have around the farm because it's one-handed, so you can pull it and you can still have your rake in your other hand. So on the way to the garden, I'm just going to stop off. We got some blueberry bushes from Nature Hills Nursery. We live in Maine, so of course we need blueberry bushes. Nature Hills carries a huge selection of all kinds of plants you order online, and they deliver them right to your house at the time that's right for planting. So we planted these in the spring, and they're going to benefit from some of this really awesome straw, feather, chicken poop mulch over the winter. It'll help protect the roots from the frost and the cold. So I'm just going to mulch the blueberries and then we'll head over to the garden. Now that the blueberry bushes are protected for the winter, we're going to head to the garden and we're going to plant some garlic. Come on, Winston. Come on, buddy. Let's go plant some garlic.
If you have backyard chickens, you need Chick Flick.
Honestly, I stumbled upon Chick Flick at a poultry show. When I found Chick Flick and went through the demonstration and realized that the Chick Flick actually eliminated the ammonia odor, I went, this actually is going to solve my problem.
As easy to use as cat litter, Chick Flick binds the ammonia with a patented active ingredient that actually eliminates it. Got backyard chickens? You need Chick Flick.
Whether you have just 5 chickens in your flock or more than 40, Horizon Structures has the coop for you. All Horizon Structures coops are fully customizable. You can choose your door down to the siding colors. You can choose from one of their pre-designed coop styles or even have them convert a garden shed into a custom coop. Made by the Amish in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the coops can be delivered anywhere in the continental USA, and they'll arrive fully assembled. For more information or to design the coop of your dreams, visit horizonstructures.com.
So this is the perfect time of year to plant garlic, September, early October. You want to plant it a couple weeks before your first frost in your area to kind of let it get settled. Garlic is kind of a neat crop because you plant it when you don't have anything else in your garden. So you're using up garden space that you wouldn't normally be using. Not much bothers garlic, deer, squirrels, bugs, or whatever, so I generally don't plant it inside my fenced-in garden. You can plant it out in an area where it's just going to be out there because I really don't find that anything eats it. So you just want to rake your soil a little bit, plant it in a sunny, well-drained area, and that's about it. So now that our soil is ready, I saved some of the garlic that we planted last year. You want to save some of your biggest cloves because the bigger cloves will make bigger bulbs for you the next year. And you just separate your bulb into cloves, and you pull out your handy little garden dibble. And you want to plant the cloves about 4 to 6 inches apart, about 2 inches down. So not really too deep with the pointy end up. So you just make your little hole, go over 6 inches or so. So each clove by summer will have turned into an entire bulb, which is pretty neat. So between what we use for the chickens and in cooking, I can go through 100 bulbs a year easily, so I'll probably plant about 100 bulbs. So you just keep doing that, and then you're going to start your next row about 6 inches apart. All right, so we've got our cloves planted. You leave the papers on and everything. You just want to pull out any weeds, and then just cover them up. And then we just want to put a little bit of the straw from the coop, you know, just maybe, I don't know, 2 inches, 4 inches of the straw, and that will help protect them from the temperature changes in the winter, keep them from actually freezing, and that's all you do. You don't have to water it, you don't have to do anything to it, you just leave it all winter long, and then come spring, your garlic is going to start to sprout, you're going to start to see green coming up, and there are scapes, which are the thin, kind of curly things that come out of the middle of the leaves. You want to snap those off so the garlic centers most of its energy in growing a new bulb for you. And then once the leaves turn brown and yellowy and kind of start to die off, probably in July, you just pull up your bulbs and you've got rows of garlic. And then you'll want to save your biggest cloves. I always save my largest cloves to plant for the next following year. So after you've harvested your garlic, you can either braid it or just leave it out to dry for a couple weeks. And then you want to cut off the roots and the tops, and then you can put it in your pantry and it'll last all year. So that's how you plant garlic, and it's a great use for the litter that you take out of your coop in the fall. So the garden season is pretty much over. We harvested our tomatoes and peas and peppers, a lot of lettuce. So I decided to let the chickens in. I pulled out the tomatoes first. Tomatoes are in the nightshade family and they can be toxic. So before I let the chickens into the garden, I do just pull out white potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant. So the chickens are roaming around and they're just kind of eating whatever they see that they like the looks of, in addition to eating any kind of, leftover. I've got some greens left still for them, but they'll scratch through these dead leaves. They'll kind of incorporate them into the soil. They'll obviously be pooping in the garden, which will fertilize it for next spring. So, I would even leave the chickens in here all day. They're safe from predators, and just let them roam around the garden and eat anything that's left over. So I've got some pumpkins to pick, and then we'll head back to the house and I'll show you how to make a delicious cheesecake out of them. But before that, I'm going to use the rest of the litter from the coop and just spread it around. Over the winter, it will kind of incorporate into the soil all this great nitrogen from the chicken manure, the calcium from the chicken feathers, And the chickens can scratch through it and they'll help spread it also. So I'm just going to dump it and just kind of leave it, and then we'll just use the cart to bring the pumpkins back to the house.
Every yank of your tank is a tug of war. It's about time someone declared war on the tug. The Duluth Trading No Yank Tank. Stop yanking and get cranking. Only at DuluthTrading.com.
Your girls deserve the best. When feeding your chickens Blue Seal Home Fresh poultry products, you will be giving them the balanced nutrition they need for their everyday health. You can be fully confident that Blue Seal products not only contribute to their nutrient-rich eggs, but also to the pretty sheen on their feathers. Visit their website, blueseal.com, or your local Blue Seal retailer to learn more.
Now that the holiday season is here, you get invited to a lot of parties or you have people over, and one of my favorite recipes is a pumpkin cheesecake that you can make with pumpkins that you grew and some of your fresh eggs. So what you need to do first is make pumpkin puree. You need about 3/4 of a cup for this recipe. So once you've done that, you'll want to start the crust for your cheesecake. You need ginger snap cookies. It's kind of a variation on a graham cracker crust. So ginger snap cookies in your food processor till you have 1.5 cups. To that, you'll want to add 4 tablespoons of melted butter. Stir it all up, and then you press the crust into the bottom of a springform pan and just press the crust in the bottom. And then you'll want to put aluminum foil around the bottom of the pan. Put this in the refrigerator and just let it chill while you make the rest of your cheesecake. Okay, so to make the filling of the cheesecake, in a stand mixer, you put 4 packages of cream cheese at room temperature so it'll mix up nicely. And then kind of get it mixed up a little bit, and then pour in 1 cup of sugar and 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. Then once it's mixed, you'll add in 1 cup of sour cream. So then we're going to add 3 eggs, sort of one at a time. And then you want to add a teaspoon of vanilla bean paste and just let that go for a minute until it's mixed up really well. Okay, so once our batter is mixed, just want to take that off. And we've got a big bowl, and you want to spoon out about half of the batter into a separate bowl and just put it aside for now. So we've got the 3/4 of a cup of pumpkin puree that we made, and then we've got 3 tablespoons of brown sugar and a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice and a tablespoon of molasses. All right, so we mixed that all up really well. Okay, so now we're ready to put the cheesecake together. So your pumpkin batter goes first, and you're gonna put about half of that into the crust, and then just level it. And then over that, put about half of your plain filling. And then the remaining pumpkin goes on top. And then with the rest of the plain batter, you just want to take a spoon and put it kind of like in that. And then just take a toothpick and sort of run it through so it gets all swirly on top. So then we're ready for the water bath and the baking. So now we're ready to bake the cheesecake. Since we went to all the trouble to make a nice decorative top, we don't want the cheesecake to crack. So we want to bake it in a water bath. So what you do is you put your springform pan into a roasting dish or casserole dish or something that it fits into. And then you just want to pour some boiling water into the roasting pan, about an inch or so. You don't want it to come over the top of your tin foil because the springform pans are not really watertight, but just about an inch into the bottom. And that should keep the top of the cheesecake from cracking as it bakes. So then we want to put it into a 325-degree oven for about an hour and 20 minutes or until it's a little bit jiggly but pretty much set. Sarah Sage Herbs Green Goo is my go-to antiseptic ointment on the farm. I love that we can use it on our chickens, ducks, dogs, and I even use it on myself. Formulated with lavender, rosemary, and other herbs, Green Goo can be used on minor cuts, scratches, and scrapes, as well as frostbite or more serious injuries. No chicken keeper's first aid kit should be without Green Goo. For more information, visit greengoohelps.com. We've had a couple nights fall close to freezing already, so I'm going to harvest and trim some of these herbs. I like to dry them for the chickens to add to their feed in the winter and also use in our cooking. And I also like to cut some of the fresh herbs like thyme and lavender and rosemary. Toss them in the coop. They help keep out bugs and help the coop smell nice over the winter. So I built this raised bed over the summer. It's right next to the coop, so it makes a nice handy place for me to grab herbs to use with my chickens. And this Shelter Logic Grow It Backyard Raised Bed Greenhouse is a great way to extend the season. So at night I can shut this and keep everything warm, and then during the day, like on nice sunny days like today, I can open it up, let them get some sun and fresh air, and this will really extend my growing season considerably, which is really important here in Maine. Herbs really benefit from being trimmed and pruned throughout the season. They will keep growing and producing for you, so I do all through the summer, you know, snip the tops off and get some of them drying or just use them fresh. But definitely when we're expecting colder weather, I really like to trim back a lot of the herbs. Basil especially is very sensitive to cold, so I'll probably cut all the basil now because we're getting too close to a frost. But some of this other stuff, the thyme, lavender and that will still last for a couple more weeks. But I'll do a lot of trimming and get some herbs drying to use with the chickens and put in their feed this winter. So I just want to leave you with one last tip. If you free range and your chickens lay their eggs, they might hide them under bushes or you know, in the woods or whatever, or sometimes our chickens are sneaky and they lay them in the coop and then they cover them with straw. So you might come across eggs, not realize how old they are, and you're not sure if you can eat them. So here's a quick way to tell how fresh your eggs are. When an egg is first laid, there is a bloom on the shell that helps keep the air from going through the pores in the egg shell. As the egg ages, air does get in through the pores, and so the egg starts to become more buoyant. So if you put it into a glass of water, it's going to start to float. So anyway, this is an egg laid today. As you can see, it just lays on the bottom of the glass, so you know that egg is fresh. This egg is about a week old. So when I put it into the water, you can see the one end sort of starts to rise up a little bit off the ground. So that egg is probably a week or two old, perfectly fine to eat. This egg is a little bit older. This egg is probably about a month old. So as you can see, it's still on the bottom of the glass, but it's pretty much standing straight up. There's air in this egg now that's causing the egg to rise a little bit. This egg is old. I don't know quite how old it is, but I've been saving it. You can see that egg pretty much is floating. So it doesn't mean this egg is bad. It still could be perfectly good to eat, but it's old. So I personally would toss that egg. The rest of these are all perfectly fine to eat, but you can kind of get an idea of how fresh an egg is by how it sits in a glass of water. So that's just my tip for the day. Also, if you're selling your eggs, you don't want to use old egg cartons or reuse the egg cartons because there can be bacteria and things on them that you don't necessarily want on your next batch of eggs. So fortunately, eggcartons.com sells these great multicolored cartons, and they also sell these neat vintage look 4x3 cartons that I really like to use for my eggs. So check them out at eggcartons.com. I hope you enjoyed this beautiful fall day on the farm with us. For more Fresh Eggs Daily, find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or visit my site, fresheggsdaily.com.